There's a shrub that's been sitting in the winter garden, and it had never done anything. I mean, it puts leaves on in the summer. It chucks them off again in the autumn, and it sits there in its skeletal form, looking dull and brown and twisty. And I suddenly went past, and I said to Graham, "Look at that!" And its branches were covered in white blossom. There's no label, of course. The label had been weeded out and all the rest of it. I couldn't work out what it was, and it annoyed me so much. I went back through some papers and things, and I suddenly found it. It's Nobeliophyllum distichum roseum group, and it's known as the white forsythia.
Hello and welcome to Talking Dirty, another episode all about the wonders at East Ruston Old Vicarage, the glorious 32-acre garden on the East Norfolk coast. At this time, of course, it's all the things amazing us in April. Over at aforementioned garden, we have, looking oh so bonny in blue, Alan Edward Herbert Gray, our happy and very handsome horticulturalist.
Well, what an introduction that was, I say. And over in Cambridgeshire, we have Thordis Maria Sophia Fridriksson. It doesn't matter if I got them in the wrong order, but you know, they're your names anyway. Yeah, it's fantastic, the weather at the moment. It's pure blue sky. We have quite a cool air still, but that's what you get with the spring on the North Norfolk coast. But it is absolutely lovely. And I mean, the garden is absolutely bursting with interesting things.
Oh, it's just, even in my much less florally decadent world than Alan's, it is just so exciting to see the things coming through in your own garden. You know, daily walks with the dog, with the child, so much to look at. The brainwashing is continuing if you're interested in, you know, parenthood over here. So we're trying to learn as many of the plants in our garden and on our walk as possible. And it's
I
such
think
an
he's
exciting
doing quite well, isn't he?
Yeah. The other day, proudest moment so far, he asked me, Mummy, find this is kind of this is kind of embarrassing in that I know this is like an overly proud mother moment, but just bear with me. There aren't many people I can tell about this because no one gets it. Mummy, find muscari and periwinkle.
At 2 years old, that's damn good, I think.
And then I found them. I mean, my triumph then, I found a front garden with muscari, with periwinkle, and with daffodils. Beat that. So anyway, yeah, sorry for the showing off, but there aren't that many people that I can kind of will relate to the joy of seeing that in a little person. And also, I've got to strike while the iron is hot. Football is clearly going to overtake horticulture at some point. So we'll get in there while he's little enough to love it. But yeah, it's just a glorious time of year. The magnolias around me, as ever, making me so jealous because I've only got one small pot grown specimen that I'm desperate to put in the ground in the next garden. You, of course, you're just like swimming in magnolia petals over at East Ruston.
Well, we are. I mean, you know, and when I went to look at them yesterday, I actually suddenly realised why lots of people can't grow them because some of these almost tree-like magnolias, I mean, you know, we've got one called Vulcan, which is the very dark one I sent you a picture of, which is absolutely stunning at the moment. But that plant is probably 25 feet tall and 15 feet across. Well, you know, that is a large chunk of garden it's taking up. And I think that's where we're lucky with our 32 acres and the fact that, you know, you can soon fill it up with trees.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you see so many of them, don't you? There was such a big craze, I suppose, on planting magnolias in front gardens. So wherever you go, you see them. And I suppose some people let them do their thing, their glorious sort of architectural, sculptural branches. And then you see them sort of hacked and lopped and because they were obviously planted way too
Yeah.
close to the bungalow, the house, wherever it might be.
Well, the problem is if you do start chopping magnolias about, they produce an awful lot of water shoots, and you really have to whip those water shoots off when they're soft, if you possibly can,
Mm.
because they would distort the shape of the bush and the shrub and the tree, whatever it turns out to be. But yes, I mean, you know, magnolias, they're fleeting, they're brief. There was a lovely photograph in the Financial Times on Saturday of Harold Hillier's place, and when he planted. Well, this house has a most magnificent avenue of magnolias leading to the front, and they are absolutely stunning. And you think, you know, to have had the foresight to plant those I don't know, 30, 40 years ago. I think he died in the 1980s, so I mean, it's prior to that. But why they are there is because he had some left over he didn't know what to do with. And he thought, well, I'll make an avenue leading up to the house. But, you know, that is a snap judgment of a moment that's turned out to be, and it's a shame that he can't see it now, but it turned out to be a magnificent I mean, it knocks your socks off. I mean, you have to give a dinner party every night when you've got magnolias like that, don't you? Or lunch or something, just to show off.
How many different varieties do you think you have? And of those, which is the most accommodatable? Not sure that's a word, but we'll go with it. Accommodatable in a normal size garden.
Well, in a normal sized garden, the small Magnolia stellata, it has to be one of those. There's pink and white forms of it. The pink to me is a bit sugary, but the white is what it is. It's a pure white flower, and they are the best for smaller gardens if you can. The most common one that we see in front gardens today is plain old Magnolia solangiana, which has the sort of pink and purple cast to the white flowers. And quite often, we have been lucky this year because I don't think many of them have been spoilt. At least not here they haven't. But quite often, if you get a frost when they're in flower, the flowers will suddenly just go brown overnight, and that's it until next year. But I mean, how many varieties have I got? I don't know, 20, 30 probably, I think. One of my favorites is one that flowers later. And I always think this is an important thing for the reason I just said, because the early flowering ones are prone to frost damage. It hangs its flowers too. And it's a fairly tall shrub. I can't remember the name of it, which is ridiculous, but we'll try and put it on the podcast for you afterwards. It has hanging white flowers with a boss of bright red stamens in the middle. And that really is, I think, super special in a way. But I mean, as a race of plants, they are. And the interesting thing is that there are people doing breeding work the whole time. I mean, go back 25, 30 years, we didn't have a yellow magnolia. We do now. And they started off being, shall I say, a whiter shade of primrose. But now they're becoming much more canary-esque. Uh, and people are just working on them the whole time. And they would do two things. They would breed for different colors and different shapes, but for different sizes too. So that, because let's face it, people's gardens are getting smaller, they're not getting bigger. And I mean, there may come a time when people don't even have enough room to plant a tree. So they need to have something that's going to be fairly small growing. As long as they don't take too much character away, I don't mind.
Well, as I've said in my ridiculous garden, because it's one of those gardens where you're always looking to move. Alan will know this, pretty much since the day I moved in here, like, we're going to move, still here. But I've probably said before, didn't want to spend money on a tree I knew I would be loath to leave behind. And so one day when I was seeing my mum, where she keeps her pony, they'd been all pulling out wild cherries and chucking them on the muck heap. So I brought a couple home and put them in water and tried to revive them and planted two. One of them survived, obviously the one in the least suitable location. But anyway, and it's having its first blossom this year now, which and starting to get the cherry look to its bark as well. And I'm super excited about that. I mean, common old thing, not really a suitable spot, but it worked for me at the time, and bringing me joy. It's this thing of plants. They don't have to be all that special sometimes to just put a smile on your face.
No, exactly. Exactly. And I mean, quite often it's a sentimental association with the plant as well,
Mm.
which is important because if it was given to you by somebody important in your life or important in your journey through gardening, and I've got lots of plants, so that's Anne Borrells, that kind of thing. And it's a lovely way of remembering people. I've got Granny Gray's peony and Granny Gray's stock as well.
I was talking to drop this in talking to Adam Frost about this the other day. He's not my pal. I was doing an interview for the radio, but I think his latest book, as far as I can tell, I haven't looked at it yet, is all about this. Talking about plants, not just about this is the job you do at this time of year, but talking about the memories and
Hmm.
associations. And so we touched on that in our interview of he's got step over apples because of this reason, and these trees came from a Chelsea garden he did, and these plants associated with grandparents. I mean, of course, those grandparent associations or childhood memories. The magnolia, I so remember a quite wealthy friend of mine, certainly wealthier than I was, who had a big garden with this unbelievable magnolia in it. And that is just a mental picture from being about
Yeah.
9 that I will never ever lose. And so I kind of always associate magnolias with her and with my nanny, because we were always waiting for her magnolia to flower. And you get one, then you got two, and now obviously absolutely bedecked.
Yeah, well, that's the thrilling thing, isn't it? I mean, I was lucky enough to find something. It's common old ivy, actually. It's just a plain green ivy, but it is the yellow berried ivy, Now I've got this yellow-berried ivy, but I've got it in its adult form, so it's a shrub. And I was lucky enough to find some plants from Mr. Tim Fuller at the Plantsman's Preference. An excellent nursery, by the way,
Who
and
loves his ivies?
does a wonderful, yeah, and he does a wonderful mail order service. But I was able to find three plants of this particular ivy in its climbing form, so I can have three of them around the garden. After all, I do have 32 acres, you see, to fill up. Anyway, but now, what I think is the most lovely thing is that it has these astonishing yellow berries. In all other respects, it's just an ivy. But the fruit, when they ripen, they become this wonderful golden yellow, and it just sings out across the garden. It's absolutely stunning. So those are each going to go at the base of a tree around the garden, and we'll see how they do.
It's so funny. We often joke about this 32 acres. If you listen to us on the radio, you'll know it's a bit of a running theme. I try and just drop it into conversation wherever I can. And yet, of course, we all know that even with 32 acres, there are so many points where you feel like you're running out of room, particularly because it's not like you've just got this 32-acre expanse. They're all individual garden rooms, they're individual borders. And
Yeah.
so actually everything is a bit more on the sort of scale, most of them, I mean, not quite on the scale I'm working with, but it is comparable because they're garden rooms to, comparable to people's
Well,
plots.
we have a small part of the garden here that is, I mean, it's had some walls built and a gate, which I call the Pharaoh's Gate, which Graham doesn't like. So, but he won't name it with anything at the moment. So for the moment, it is the Pharaoh's Gate, and yeah, on the south side of that, there's lovely south, west, and east facing walls. No, south and west facing walls. I beg your pardon. And we've raised the level of the soil up a little bit so that it's probably about 30 centimeters higher than the surrounding level of the soil, which is a wonderful south-facing sun trap, raised beds. Just think how good that drainage is going to be. And it's the kind of area that's reasonably intimate before you enter the desert. And it's the kind of area that people will stop and look at the minutiae of the plants growing there. Now I'm filling it up at the moment, and it's sort of looking a bit small already. But the thing is, I'm not afraid to change things, and I want to soften some of the edges, some of the board and the stone edging. I want to soften that, so I'm working out how to do that. And I'm going to be refurbishing some of my troughs in a few days, actually. In one of my troughs, I have a particularly lovely Delosperma, which is used to be Mesembryanthemum, and it's a succulent daisy. But this one is hardy if it's well drained, and it's hanging right over the side of the trough. And so I thought, oh, that's a ready-made drooper or droper, drooper for my covering my edges, you see. So I thought, well, if I refurbish the troughs and take the good things out of the troughs, which will fit the bill of being an edge softener, I can then redo the troughs with something more exciting. So that's what I'm doing. But it's all a bit hodgepodge in a fun sort of way because I suddenly see something else that I'd like to use. And I have got one or two nice little dwarf dianthus I'm using in my troughs as well. So that's rather nice because the troughs are situated next to seats and things, and they can be used as to assault the olfactory senses of the people that sit there. To be stubbly and smelly
And
in
you
a nice.
mentioned these new raised beds being sort of in a lovely tucked away southwest facing aspect, got all that nice drainage. Are you going for a particular theme? Are you looking at a particular location, geographic location as your starting point, your inspiration?
South Africa.
Oh,
Yeah, South Africa, because there's two or three things to this. I mean, I've just been through the soil, so it's free draining. The other thing is that Father Christmas brought me some cloches for Christmas, which was rather nice. And I'm thinking that if I shall we say, fiddle with nature a little bit, I want to try something called Vallota, which is known as the Scarborough lily, which is a bulbous plant that comes from South Africa. It has, in late summer, it has these lovely red flowers, and it makes copious quantities of babies all the time. And I have heard and have read that it has been grown outside in southern parts of England, but I can't believe that it could possibly be done so without protection. And there's some gladioli, species gladioli from South Africa as well that I want to try. And Watsonias too, another bulb from South Africa, which they're a bit like Cosmea in a funny sort of way, but They're rather more refined, I think, than crocosmia, because instead of the flowers going swan neck sideways, they actually go straight up. And there's some lovely, lovely specimens of that. So I've got some of those in there, and I'm going to put some of the gladioli in there, and plants like Sparaxis, the harlequin flower, tiny little thing, but the most vibrant, vibrant flowers, some with a black center, some with a white center, but bright yellows, bright oranges, bright reds, bright pinks. And you know, they are tuppence. They're nothing. You know, they're very, very cheap. Let's say it. Come on, I hate the word, but there you are. They are very, very cheap. So you can buy them and you can plant them by the handful. And so every now and again, I to go through and looking at things, and I think, oh, come on, handful of Sparaxis can go in there, and well, just lots of lovely things. So once they're planted, and when it comes to the winter, I want to use my cloches to help them come through that winter. Now, I can't have heat in there, obviously, but I can have hot, drainage to keep them as dry as possible through the winter, and I can put something over them as a mulch, whether it be something fibrous like bark or something like that, or chopped wood or whatever. But I've got to keep the moisture out as much as possible. I have a feeling that it's going to be straw, which will annoy Graham because it'll blow everywhere when we take the closest off. But, you know, one good gust of wind, it's gone. There is now a race of Hippeastrums or amaryllis that are said to be garden, you know, worthy of growing in the garden. I still am suspicious that they won't be able to be grown in everybody's garden without winter protection. And so they will go on the list as well. But you know, you live and learn, you experiment and see what happens. I'm also planting tiger flowers, you know, Tigridia. Well, they very, very rarely ever come through the winter in this country. And it'd be interesting to see if I have any more luck than the man down the road or something. But there's a place I plant, I drive through Houghton on the way to Norwich, and there's very much a raised bed. It's about 4 feet above the ground. Level of the ground, and it's in front of a house as you're driving through Houghton. And whoever gardens there gardens with an interest in unusual plants. How often do you see tigridas? You don't. But they were in her garden last year, exquisite versions of narcissi that, you know, not the common or garden sort of yellow blobby jobs, but rather refined ones. And I think that this person has an eye for the unusual or an interest in the unusual. So I shall keep a close eye on her. I might even befriend her. Who knows?
No, you should. I can see now why, despite obviously your vast space and this bed being quite a good size to be working with, it is already getting full with all of this
Yes.
inspiration, with all these things you want to
Well,
experiment with.
then of course there's the walls, Thordies, because the walls, I mean, the walls there are so lovely. We've battened them. We put wooden battening across them, and I've put out several things, including a Podranea, which is a South African climber, and Podraneas, I think they're Bignoniaceae. If you know what a bignonia is, they're related to that. And they have the most wonderful flaunting panicles of lovely pink flowers with sort of stippled orange and black dots in the throat. And they're just a dreamy thing. I planted one on the front of the house last year, at the beginning of the season, and I've sort of wound it through things and all the rest of it. And I was working there on Sunday, and I noticed that the buds all along the stems are plumping up. So it has come through the winter. And I planted one in this garden as well. And I planted, what else we got? I have an Abutilon called Fool's Gold, which is a golden color, as you'd expect. But the flowers are kind of sort of pleated around the edge of the petals, which is a little bit different, sort of turned and crimped, and they're lovely. I've got that waiting to go in there. That won't go in yet. But I've got a seat in there because there's a lovely couple that come to the garden, and when we were refurbishing this area, we took the seat away, you see, and he said, "Oh, you've taken my seat away," and they're season ticket holders, so they come regularly. And I said, "Well, don't worry, it's going back." And I said, "Do you like this particular area?" Then he said, "Well, because I'm pushing my wife in a wheelchair, we always stop here for halfway and we sort of have a rest and, you know, just enjoy and chew the cud and all the rest of it." And so the seat's gone back. I planted a Daphne behind the seat so that there's there'll be this lovely scent earlier on in the year. Yeah, it's just interesting the things that are going in there. We've got a lovely plant for Clianthus, a red flowered Clianthus, the lobster claw. That's going in there. But I'm just waiting for the nights to warm up a little bit. I don't want to put too much out while getting sharp frosts. But I tell you what I did find, and this is how things happen. I found a plant, a pot full of Helichrysum petiolatum, and it's that ziggy-zaggy thing that runs through plants. It's another South African, but it is tender. I found it in a pot behind the greenhouse, close to the greenhouse, so it maybe got a little bit of residual heat coming through the glass. It's in perfect condition. So I took that up there and I planted that at the bottom of Fremontodendron californicum, which is a shrub that it quite likes to have wall protection. A shrub with big orange flowers almost throughout the year. And so that can weave its way through. And I just thought, a happy accident, you see, is something I must use this. If I used it on its own, it would look nothing. But woven through something else, it looks kind of interesting.
Going back to what you were saying about, waiting, holding fire at this point to just make sure we get to those good nighttime temperatures. Mother Nature is such a tease at this time of year. And I always feel bad for people. I mean, I feel bad for all of us because we have to be patient. But when you're in those very first throes of gardening and you might go to the garden centre, they might already have lots of tempting things out. You're like, right, it's sunny, I'm going to plant everything out. And you could have such an expensive mistake that could really put you off at this point in the year. And so, yeah, for all of us, like
Yeah,
I'm desperate to do so much, not that I have much of an opportunity to do it.
No, but you're absolutely right and I think garden centres sometimes, I think they're getting better now because I've noticed that one or two garden centres and farm shops, they do put a little notice up that these plants are frost sensitive, so don't plant them out until all danger of frost has gone. But they're producing the plants rather early because they want this largest selling window that they can possibly have. You can't blame them for that, but as you say, it can be a costly mistake. And I think if you're thinking about, I mean, I've got lots of seed that I'll be using this year that I haven't even sown yet. I mean, I haven't sown zinnias yet, and I won't sow zinnias until the middle to end of April. And the reason for that is because zinnias and plants like morning glory or ipomoeas, or they hate cold nights. They hate that drop in temperature. And if you plant them out too early, they may get killed, but they will probably be checked by that cold, which means that they won't grow as well as they would do if you left it a little bit later. So zinnias grow exceedingly fast anyway. I found an old packet of Tithonia seed the other day. Orange flowers. It's a thuggish plant, really, because it's a big, coarse plant, but it's the flowers. They're this piercing yellow, piercing orange. And if you want, there is a yellow variety, by the way. There's piercing orange. But if you want something to fill space fairly quickly, just sow a few Tithonia seeds. My seeds were old, and I thought, well, I'll just sow a few to see if they're still viable. Mustard and cress, here they are. Look at me. I suspect they're going to be too early for me to plant out, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's I'm excited. I'm always excited about the idea of growing stuff. When I did go up to just throw a couple of salady things down to cover up at the allotment, to fleece at the allotment, I didn't have a huge amount of luck because my child sat on most of the things I was trying to sow. So I think sort of sums up probably what my growing season is going to be like. What I am quite excited about though is while he's distracted in the allotment, it's harder because if he's not in the sandpit, then I have to watch him because he could just run away. In my garden, he's contained, and I think we're now getting to a point where he's distracted with his toy lawnmower. Not my doing, obviously. I don't believe in my lawn. I want it to plant it. So anyway, he has a toy lawnmower. He has various things that he's moving around and playing with. While he's doing that, I have high hopes for planting up some pots and things. I mean, somewhere over here, here it is. I've been poring over potential Coleus, which is also a good way of trolling my partner because he absolutely loathes them. Not a Solenastenum fan. But yeah, I'm trying to sort of figure out if I want to go big on a couple of different ones of these, and I can't isolate which ones I want because I love them all, but I don't want it to be too dotty. So at the currently leaning
Yeah, I
towards
know what you
Burgundy
mean.
Wedding Train. But then I also love Pink Chaos, and I don't think they're going to sit well as bedfellows. If I have a big
Yeah.
blob of Burgundy Wedding Train and a big blob of Pink Chaos, I think even I won't like that. So yes, I'm trying to work out which I go for.
Well, we're very lucky because we have a Dutch wholesaler, and he has the most marvelous coleus later on in the season, and fairly big plants in fairly big pots, so that you don't need that many. So that's the way I tend to buy them because I like a few of those dotted through the pots around my front door
Mm.
because it faces north. I mean, they're ideal plants for shade. They don't like too much sun, as you know, because you've grown them before. But they're ideal for that area. I tell you what else I sowed the other day, and I was amazed to see that it germinated. And it was a very old packet of seed of the marvel of Peru, Mirabilis jalapa. It's a funny sort of plant. It has these tubular flowers, and they can be pink, they can be yellow, they can be orange, and all the rest of it. There's a new variety which I hadn't seen before called angels trumpets, actually. Not as like a bragmansia because they're much smaller, but they are pale pink trumpets with a little white eye in the pink eye in the middle, red eye in the middle. And they have germinated, and so have the old seed. So that's a good one. Don't throw your old seed away. If you've got space, just sow it and wait and see. I mean, you don't have to sow all of it if you haven't got the space to carry on, but just a little pinch, just sow it in a tiny little pot. As long as you keep it moist, you're testing the viability of the seed.
And does that require bottom heat? I'm asking because I was given a little packet of home collected seed of that the other week that I haven't sown, and
Well,
I,
no, I put mine straight in the greenhouse and no bottom heat.
mm.
I mean, I've got the tray of new ones on bottom heat, but they didn't need it because they're no further ahead than the others. I sowed them both on the same day, and they're all germinating together.
There's a
Um,
garden near me where I don't know why, but the only thing they grow is that Mirabilis velopa. They have either side of their front door this sort of walled off section, and they grow it there, and obviously it does its thing, and then it disappears, and they have nothing at all.
but
And then they have that.
yeah, but the curious thing about it is it makes an enormous tuber under the ground. And if providing the area is sheltered enough, that will come through the winter and produce you
Yeah.
plants, lots of plants.
So
But
it
the
does.
tuber is absolutely enormous.
I don't know if it was already there because they clearly such a weird thing to me to not be demonstrably into gardening and yet to have this as your one planting. I don't know if it was there when they moved in. They've been there the whole time I've been here. Every time I walk past, it's just in the summer, and then nothing else. Anyway, it's a fabulous plant. I'm excited I've got seed of it, and now I know I don't need bottom heat because there's no bottom heat going on in this growing
Well,
situation over
no, no,
here.
no. I mean, as long as it's you've got a warm windowsill, it'll be
Yeah,
fine.
well, that's
The only thing
exciting.
is, if people are growing on warm windowsills, don't forget to turn your tray every day, literally every day, because seedlings will always lean towards the light. And if you don't do that, you get lopsided jalapas.
Give them a little tickle. I was reading a good friend of ours, Dan Cooper, does lovely blogs and things on his Dan Cooper Garden website and had a great one about everything you could want to know about gardening in April, including, giving your seeds a little bit of
Oh
a
yes,
gentle stroke to kind of try and simulate some of the trials and tribulations that normal weather puts upon
yes.
seedlings as they grow, which
Just
obviously
run
they
your
do
hand
get.
across it. It
Yeah,
sort of mimics the wind going over them, and it,
yeah.
it just helps them become more sturdy.
It is amazing how pathetic they become if they are too cosseted seedlings
Oh
when they
yes,
when they grow.
yes. I was quite pleased with myself the other day because I had a disaster in actual fact because this brilliant blue annual that I grow, it's a blue pimpernel, Anagalis, and I think I've got three plants that have rooted out of 12 cuttings. That's all, and it's probably my fault, and it was due to neglect, I think. And when I went to look at them, they were covered in aphids. So I rinsed them clean of the aphids and got rid of those. But I actually managed to take another 12 cuttings from those three cuttings. So we're up to 12 again. It's never enough, but I mean, it will it will help.
I was trying to get Theo interested in taking cuttings from sweet peas because we talked about it on the radio and I had some
Yeah,
sweet pea plants. So I thought, I mean, he could not have been less interested. But still, I thought of you as I was there taking a few
yeah.
cuttings and potting them up with zero interest from my toddler. Uh, Now, before we move on to any kind of flomo, I know one thing we haven't talked about that is looking lovely in your garden at the moment is your cork oak. You sent me this fabulous picture on WhatsApp the other day of all of this wonderful bark. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, it's a tree that Graham probably planted about maybe 20 years ago. I don't know. And it was clothed in foliage and leaves from the top to the bottom. And it was only when it's an evergreen. And the only thing is that when we peered inside, we sort of realized that you can't see the character of the tree. And cork oaks, they tend to grow, if they get blown sideways, they'll stay there. And then if they get blown the other way, they'll go that way as well. So you get this lovely sort of gnarled, almost bonsai look, but it's a giant bonsai. And so we crown raised it. We took all the lower branches off to a certain level, and we might probably do more in actual fact. And, carefully done, cutting close to the trunk so that you don't leave any snags or make any obvious horrible leaving stumps behind. You get the character of the tree coming out, and it is suddenly something you look at and you appreciate it because it's like a living sculpture.
Yeah.
It really is. It's absolutely lovely, and it's fascinating to think that from that gnarly old bark, cork was made, cork tiles and cork flooring, whatever they did with it. I mean, even bottle corks, years ago that would be made from cork oak. So it's just a fascinating thing. I think they used to actually skin the bark off the tree and maintain the tree so that it produced then another crop of bark, if you see what I mean. I don't quite know how they did it, but it'd be interesting to find out, I think.
Well, you've got homework before the next episode. You need to, come back armed with research on the
Well,
history.
yes, Madam Google will help a bit with that, I expect. Can I put in a little plea to anybody who's listening out there? Because years ago, me and Stephen Malster, who he grows an awful lot of plants for me, we had a double-flowered blue lobelia called Kathleen Mallard.
Mhm.
And if you go online, you can find it and you find pictures of it. And it was the most lovely thing. And I can't find it for sale anywhere. I can find it for sale in 2011, but that's way behind now. So I just wondered if anybody knows anybody who's got a plant, Lobelia Kathleen Mallard, and if they have, could I buy it, please? Thank you.
Well, there's Alan's Flomo. What a great
Yeah.
one. Flomo, of course, being that fear of missing out you get about a flower or a plant. And I have, well, Instagram and Country Living magazine to thank for mine because the wonderful Jane Ann Walton, who we of course have featured on this episode before, talking about not only the joys of her garden but her fabulous auricular collection, she is featured in Country Living in the May edition, and it's all dainty divas. Not a long article, sadly. So my £7, my 6.99 was for basically, 2 columns or something of writing. But I did get to revel in Jane Ann Walton's, glorious garden and her fabulous auriculars, and then obviously go get excited about all the wonderful flowers that she will be sharing and growing tips and everything on Instagram. So if you don't follow her, Jane_Ann_Walton, I will link to the auricular special she did because there was so much information about the compost mix she does, how she deals with root aphids and weevils and all of the various trials and tribulations and timings of getting the kind of perfection she gets with auriculars. And actually, she's award winning now. She's, entered them into competition and she's done very well with it. But it got me looking. I've lost my notebook. There we go. Got me looking at her Instagram, and I cannot allow myself to put auriculars on my Flomo list. This is not the time in my life to be entertaining too many auriculars. But turns out that while she's waiting for all of her auriculars to get going, I mean, of course, Jane Ann Walton has all of the most amazing plants, much like Alan. She has quite a collection of Primula allioni,
Yep.
and they're just lovely. And she mentioned one in particular. She did a picture of one called Broadwell Oliver, which was just such a lovely, lovely colour, delicate and primulas. I mean, is there ever a primula that I've met that I haven't wanted to grow and haven't fallen in love with? I don't think so. So I just thought, well, maybe I can allow myself to go a bit more down that route. Also, she's always got such great self-seeded areas, and I never know how to say Chionodoxas. I think they might have even been
Giannodoxa. You did it.
Chionodoxa.
Giannodoxa.
Chionodoxa.
Yeah.
Do you go ch or
Yeah.
k?
Sure.
Ch. I
If
don't
I'm
even know.
posh, I'm a doka.
I
You'll
have a
grow
horrible,
Giannodoxa.
I have a horrible feeling they've also been like reclassified as Scillas, like Scilla,
Yeah.
Chionodoxa. I'm glad you gave me a pronunciation guide because Theo's been asking me what they are, and I just go Glory of the Snow because I don't want to say the name wrong. But she has Lucilia, and
Yeah.
I think I only have ever
Luciliae, I think.
grown for Bessii, which is
Yeah.
obviously whiter, and they're
Yeah.
nice, but they're what you see everywhere. And her much more violety other ones that I don't seem to be able to pronounce very well. They were self-seeding along with some Corydalus solida into some gravel, and I just thought it's lovely.
It is lovely, but you know and to see a well-managed piece of gravel. I mean, just go to Beth Chatto's in White Barn in near Colchester in Essex and see the gravel garden there. It is fantastic, but you've got to know what you're looking at. So you've got to be able to recognise those seedlings, and some will stay, and some will be potted on and grown on to be sold or to be used somewhere else in the garden. But you really do have to know what you're looking at. And to a certain extent, I have to say for myself, that I got a little triangular bed outside my potting shed, which is in the shade. And years ago, somebody gave me this lovely little white Corydalis, and I think I had three plants. And anyway, Anne gave me three of those, and I looked the other day, and there's about 40 plants now. So it is now doing its thing. But it's only since I stopped weeding the bed that it's done it. So I was obviously pulling out the seedlings with other things. So
Yeah.
you've got to be, it's called give and take, I think, really.
Yeah. I do think it must be one of the most rewarding things about the more you garden and the more you weed, learning what these tiny little baby seedlings look like.
Yeah, yeah.
I find it so exciting because, of course, you can look and think at a glance, nothing's happening, or that thing I've sown isn't growing. It's only when you get down and you pour over it and you're weeding and you're looking that you start to see it all. And I always find that so rewarding and just full of all the things I love most about gardening and growing.
Well, the first thing is to be able, you have to train yourself, you see, because the first pair of seed leaves, the cotyledons, they emerge first. So we got two of those, and the next pair of leaves will quite often be completely different from the cotyledons. So that you probably won't recognize your seedling by the cotyledons, but you'll only when it makes its first true leaves. But you get to the stage where you can. And it would be a strange sort of thing. It's just the shape of the cotyledon. Sometimes they have a little bit of a red stem on the where it, joins the main stem of the plant. And it is fascinating, but you can learn. I mean, I did it with hellebores years and years and years ago, and it's happening all the time now because I'm training myself to do it because I want to know that there is some seedlings that I've got to leave and dig up when they're big enough to transplant.
Some plants that you want to get rid of are actually quite kind in terms of being very distinctive. Borage cotyledons are quite distinctive.
Yeah.
Little helping hand if you want to get rid of some.
Yeah. Well, what's the other thing with those piercing little blue flowers? What's that
Oh, the
called?
alkanet.
Alkanet. That's it. I mean, there is nothing like it. I mean, I adore it, but it is a thug. And, it makes a huge long tap root, and, you've got to get a lot of it out to get rid of it. But it is such a joy because it's this tiny little flower on this hairy old plant, but it's this piercing blue. And if you get enough of it, it's the kind of thing that I think we should plant here at East Ruston as you come into the garden on the car park as a kind of intro, if you like.
Mm.
In actual fact, that's quite a nice way of thinking of planting, isn't it? Because I remember when I first went to Beth Chatto's garden, at the start of her drive into the garden, there was masses of Euphorbia wolfenii.
Mm.
And we didn't grow Euphorbia wolfenii very much in those days. I mean, it's a long while ago. And it was seeing something new and something vibrant. And she probably just dug some seedlings up and stuck them along the edge of the drive, and they looked amazing, as it does look amazing in our desert wash at the moment, because it self-seeds with alacrity.
Yeah.
The seeds get flung out and they drop between the stones and they germinate. And it's a case of edit where necessary. We have to do an awful lot of editing in that garden, actually, in fact.
I imagine you may well be doing quite a lot of editing in your new beds by your Pharaoh's Gate as well, but it'll all be worth it for the joys of all those little South African wonders.
Oh yeah, well I hope so. I mean, it's great fun. I think if you can actually perpetuate this, get it going, and perpetuate it. And no doubt I should be adding to the list of things I want to grow there because lots of the things I should probably have to try is maybe some South African seeds. So that could be another chunk of the glass house taken up for 3 years while these things grow on. But I mean, you go to somebody like Silver Hill Seeds, and they are for South African, and you see that there are let's take Ixias, for instance, a little bulbous plant that comes from South Africa. You see that in this country, we can probably buy a mixture and maybe 3 name varieties. You go to the Silver Hills Seeds and you look at the number of varieties. I've got some pots of Ixias in my greenhouse, and they're the most deliciously vibrant orange things you've ever seen. And they are going in that garden because, I mean, I bought them and I was told you shouldn't buy those because they're tender. And I always want to say, well, watch me. So they will be destined to have a close covering for the winter, and we'll see what happens.
I think you've probably just cost a lot of people a lot of money mentioning another place that we can go and find more plants we want to grow. I can only apologise for the vast FLOMO lists that we create, the horrendous impact on your bank accounts that we are undoubtedly responsible for. But hopefully you've enjoyed this foray through an amazing array of plants. There must be more on this podcast that we haven't mentioned before than I think ever. We managed to get through a lot in a short space of time. That's how I like it.
I tell you what I found the other day, and Ian potted them up for me, and that was in the desert. We have this Irish relative called a morea, and Morea, and somebody said you can't plant that; it's tender, it won't grow. Well, of course, it's got huge, but it has iris-like leaves and these flowers that are yellow with intricate markings on them, and in copious quantities of them. I mean, it really is. And we found lots of self-sown seedlings around it the other day, so we potted 20 up. I mean, I didn't do them singly; I did them as little clumps. So that's what's so exciting, isn't it? You buy 3 plants that are comparatively expensive, which I think these moreas were about £12 each 3 or 4 years ago, so they were quite expensive. But then when you get this array of lovely self-sown seedlings, well, satisfaction guaranteed.
Oh, that's my self-sown. They're like 2 of my favourite words in the English language next to each other. Alan, what a joy this has been. Thank you very much. At this time in the year when there is just glorious gardening months ahead of us, thank you for coming along with so much inspiration. Of course, the garden is open. If you happen to see this before the 27th of April, that is your next event, your next plant fair, so people can come along to that. But obviously the garden's open Wednesday to Sunday, and they've got a new coffee machine, so what's not to love? Everyone's
enjoying that, tell you.
Not least Alan and Graham. Whatever you're up to, and obviously Alan extremely busy, whatever you're up to, until next time, happy gardening.
Happy gardening, everybody. Bye-bye. What's a complaint, child?
Supposed to be compliant.
Yeah.
Thank you, phone, for trying to autocorrect that one. It's like in the early days of autocorrect, before it was very good at learning, it sometimes does still try to correct my name to thirds. I've probably signed things off thirds before, because obviously thordis, it can't contemplate being a word, but thirds is a word, so. I feel very like chlorine-y and post-baby swimming. Right.
Things you have to do. Go, right.
I know, things you have to do.
Are you ready and made up on the set? And in one trough, I have this wonderful, this lovely blue. Oh, what's it called?
Rosemary.
No, it's
what
the
blue thing.
Oh dear.
It's all right. This is a great blooper. Marvelous. Wasn't that fun? You were on fire.
Lithodora.
Lithodora.
That was the blue thing I was trying to think of.